Have you ever wondered if magic, spells, and incantations exist in the Bible? Now that's a question that might excite your curiosity. Magic, as we generally understand it, refers to the use of supernatural powers to influence or predict events. But when we say magic in the Bible, what do we mean? Well, the Bible, being a collection of texts from different periods and cultures, has its own unique lens through which it views the concept of magic. It's a multifaceted perspective that's often tied to the divine, the miraculous, and the mysterious. And sometimes it's cloaked in the language of metaphor and symbolism, making it even more intriguing to explore. From healings and prophecies to strange visions and supernatural phenomena, the Bible is rife with instances that, to our modern sensibilities, might seem akin to magic. So, are you ready to delve into this fascinating topic? Join us on a journey from the Old Testament to the New Testament, exploring instances of what might be called magic in the Bible. The Old Testament is filled with stories that may seem magical to some. This is a sentiment shared by many who delve into its ancient pages. But let's take a closer look at these tales, and perhaps uncover the mysteries and wisdom they hold. One of the most vivid examples of what could be seen as magic in the Old Testament is the face-off between Moses, Aaron, and the Egyptian magicians. You may remember the story. Moses and Aaron, armed with a staff that could transform into a snake, confront Pharaoh's sorcerers who wield similar powers. However, it's crucial to note that Moses and Aaron's actions were divinely guided, a demonstration of God's power, not a mere magic trick. This story is a complex interplay of power, faith, and divine intervention. It challenges us to consider what magic truly means within the biblical context. Is it a supernatural force independent of God, or is it God's power manifesting in the physical world? The Bible seems to suggest the latter. Next, we come across the enigmatic character of the Witch of Endor. This story, found in the first book of Samuel, tells of King Saul seeking the witch's help to summon the spirit of the deceased prophet Samuel. Now, this certainly sounds like magic, doesn't it? But again, the Bible presents this not as a positive example of magic, but as a cautionary tale against seeking supernatural guidance outside of God's will. The witch herself is surprised when Samuel's spirit appears, suggesting she didn't expect her incantations to work. This event is interpreted by many as God allowing Samuel's spirit to appear, not as a result of the witch's magic, but to deliver a divine message to Saul. Lastly, let's consider the practice of divination by prophets. Prophets in the Old Testament often received visions or dreams, which they interpreted as messages from God. These experiences, while they may seem magical, are portrayed as divine revelations rather than magic. The prophet Ezekiel's visions of the heavenly chariot, Daniel's interpretation of King Nebuchadnezzar's dream, and Joseph's ability to interpret dreams all fall under this category. They were not conjuring up these visions or interpretations through magic, but receiving them directly from the divine source. In conclusion, the Old Testament is indeed rich with stories that may seem magical at first glance. However, upon closer inspection, these events are not presented as magic in the way we understand it today. Instead, they are part of a larger narrative that underscores the omnipotence and omnipresence of God. These events, while potentially interpreted as magic, were part of a larger narrative in the Old Testament. They serve as reminders of God's power, His will, and His continuous dialogue with humanity. As we move forward, keep this perspective in mind. It will guide our understanding of similar events in the New Testament, which we will explore in the next scene. As we transition from the Old Testament to the New Testament, the interpretation of magic takes a different turn. The Old Testament, deeply rooted in ancient traditions and cultures, portrayed magic through a lens of fear and suspicion. Its pages bristle with tales of witchcraft, divination, and sorcery, often met with stern reprimands or severe consequences. However, as we cross the bridge into the New Testament, the context and interpretation of magic shift dramatically. This shift reflects the cultural and philosophical changes of the time. The world was evolving, and so too were the perspectives on magic. The New Testament, with its central focus on the life and teachings of Jesus Christ, presented magic as miracles, signs of divine intervention, and manifestations of faith. This was not magic as a secretive, forbidden art, but as a testament to the power of belief and the divine. With the advent of the New Testament, we see a different perspective on magic. In the New Testament, the concept of magic takes a backseat to miracles and divine intervention. Here, the supernatural doesn't emerge from spells and incantations, but rather from the divine power of God, channeled through His chosen ones. This shift is not just a narrative change, but also an ideological one, reflecting the evolving understanding of the divine and the supernatural. One of the most noteworthy figures in the New Testament is, of course, Jesus Christ. His miracles, from turning water into wine to healing the sick and even raising the dead, are well known. But are these acts of magic or miracles? To answer this, we must delve deeper into the context and the intent. Jesus' actions are not performed for personal gain or to manipulate the natural order. Instead, they are acts of compassion, love, and teaching, expressions of the divine will rather than a mere manipulation of it. Then there are the apostles, the chosen disciples of Jesus. They too perform miracles, such as healing the sick and casting out demons. These acts, like those of Jesus, are not powered by secret knowledge or arcane rituals, but by faith and the power of God. They are miracles, not magic, serving to affirm the message of the gospel and the divine authority of Jesus. But the New Testament also introduces us to a figure that blurs this clear-cut distinction: Simon Magus. Simon, a Samaritan sorcerer, is intrigued by the apostles' powers and even offers money to receive the same ability. This story presents us with a clear contrast. On one hand, we have the apostles performing miracles through faith and divine will. On the other, we have Simon, seeking to acquire these powers as one might acquire a magical spell or secret knowledge. Simon's story serves as a cautionary tale about the dangers of viewing divine power as a commodity or a trick. It emphasizes that the miracles of Jesus and the apostles are not magic, but acts of divine love and power. They are not to be bought or sold, but to be received with faith and humility. The New Testament, therefore, presents a complex interplay of faith, power, and interpretation. It challenges us to differentiate between magic as manipulation and miracles as divine intervention. It invites us to consider the intent and the source of power behind supernatural acts. In the end, the New Testament reframes the concept of magic, shifting it from a focus on spells and incantations to a focus on faith and divine power. It redefines the supernatural not as something that can be controlled or manipulated, but as something that is part of the divine will and expression of divine love. While some may see these as magic, others interpret them as divine miracles, highlighting the complex relationship between faith and interpretation. So, does the Bible contain magic, or is it all a matter of interpretation? We've journeyed through the Old Testament, where we found tales of staffs turning into serpents and seas parting at the wave of a hand. We've transitioned into the New Testament, where water turned into wine and the dead were brought back to life. These instances, and many more, could certainly be seen as magic. They defy the natural laws that govern our world, presenting us with acts that are seemingly impossible. But is it fair to label them as such? This is where interpretation and context become paramount. Interpreting these events as magic can be compelling. It adds an element of mystery and wonder to the biblical narratives, making them even more fascinating to delve into. However, it's crucial to remember that many of these events were understood by the people of the time as divine interventions, not as acts of magic. The miracles performed by Moses, Elijah, Jesus, and others were seen as demonstrations of God's power and love for his people, not as sorcery or witchcraft. They were acts of faith, not trickery, performed by individuals with a deep and unwavering connection to the divine. At the same time, the Bible does mention instances of magic and sorcery, often in a negative light. These instances are typically associated with individuals or groups who were seen as being in opposition to God's will. This contrast further underscores the importance of context when interpreting these events. In the end, the question of magic in the Bible is one that invites further exploration. It encourages us to delve deeper into the text, to question, to analyze, and to seek our own understanding. It's a testament to the richness and complexity of the Bible as a text that continues to inspire and provoke thought, thousands of years after it was written. Whether you see these events as magic or divine miracles, one thing is clear: the Bible is a rich and complex text that continues to inspire and provoke thought.